Hey, good morning, everyone. I am with Lorraine Thompson. She has taken the time out of her busy day to share with us the pros and cons of lease purchasing or rent to own. First of all, Lorraine is going to present herself as a seller, asking the questions that everyone wants to know about the pros and cons of lease purchasing. So once Lorraine is done asking the questions of the seller side, we're going to shift gears and have her answer ask the questions for the buyer side as well. So, Lorraine, what do you have for me this morning? Fire away.
Hey Jim. Hey guys. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So we're going to
Sure.
start with the buyers. And the first question that comes to mind is, what can you offer for credit repair? If I have poor credit and I'm trying to buy, how can you help me?
Well, that's a great question, Lorraine. A lot of buyers out there just don't have the means or the resources to figure out who to go to, who to trust. And so we pride ourselves in putting you with the best people to achieve those goals for you quickly. We have an in-house lender as well as in-house credit repair companies, so they can expedite the process and get you from point A to point B, and point B being homeownership pride.
Okay, now is that a company that you're recommending that I use, or can I just get any company out there? How does that work?
Well, again, these are resources that we've studied and researched to know that they are going to be the best, people suited for you. By all means, you're welcome to pick and choose whoever you like, but we always like to make our our recommendations for you because of the fact that we've already known what type of work they can do and how they can get it done for you fast.
Okay. All right, thank you. So if it's not, so I've kind of read a little bit about how maybe it's not more of a untraditional type of a loan or a setting because as the buyer, I wouldn't be able to get a traditional loan if my credit isn't good. So how does that work with the process? Like, would I be putting down money like a loan? Uh, as far as a lease purchase, I think that that is the correct terminology to use in order to qualify.
Yes. Well, lease purchase, rent to own, it's the same exact term. And sometimes people get confused and think it's two separate things, but it actually means the same thing. So the lease purchase program, rent to own, is a program that is set up for buyers like yourself that cannot get the traditional financing. So there is a down payment requirement, and it just depends on the property size. We'd like to collect at least 3% down, just like you would if you were to go and obtain a loan. What the beautiful thing is about this thing is you're starting to build a history of payments, which the lenders love to see, and especially if you're making a history of payments of the property in which you want to purchase. So the crazy part about it is, even though title does not go in your name at the time of possession, the lender actually treats it like a refinance for you. Therefore, it's less expensive for closing costs that you may endure, as well as appraisal issues are usually a lot softer as well.
Hmm. Okay. All right. So I can see how that can establish my credit through payments, renting this home, renting to own or lease purchase.
Yes.
Okay. What who do you normally work with as far as credit scores? Like what would I need to have?
Well, that's really a lender question because we don't specialize in, doing the loan for you. But, and our in-house lender has different guidelines. There's different programs, being created and offered to buyers all the time. So, I mean, we have our in-house lender. I've seen where she's been able to get a loan for somebody with a credit score as low as 500. I talked to her just yesterday, and she talked to me about how A buyer that's self-employed may not be claiming all their money on their tax returns, or they're taking all the write-offs that they can. As a self-employed individual like myself, even, I take off all the write-offs. So when you see my tax return, it looks like I'm not making very much money, but in essence, I am. I'm just taking advantage of what the government allows us to take off in write-offs. So to answer your question, that's the lender is the best person to speak to about the different guidelines, but there are a lot of programs out there, and credit scores can be as low as 500.
Okay. All right. So what exactly does owner financing mean?
Well, owner financing is a term that is used to actually act as the bank. A seller can act as the bank and finance a large portion of the loan for them. So basically, you don't have to go through banks. So the qualifications are less stringent, obviously, and they're a lot quicker. And typically, on an owner finance, you're looking to put at least 10% down. But again, it's all relative to negotiations and what you're able to work out with that seller that's willing to do the owner financing with you. We just had one yesterday that we're putting together where we're offering owner financing for somebody, and they're only putting $3,500 down on a $74,000 house. Reason being is because the property needs some repairs, and the buyer's willing to put up that expense. So again, there's different situations for properties, and what the buyer is able to do and negotiate with the seller.
Okay. So as I'm looking over some of these other questions that I have for you, I'm just thinking that it might be best at this point to ask you, if the buyer comes to you, I come to you and I say, I've never really done this before. Where exactly do I start?
Okay. Well, we do have some video training that we provide for them, but the starting point is open up the communication lines with me, and I can take them through step by step of what that process is going to look like for them, based on what type of income they make, what is their monthly budget to support a payment, things of that nature.
So basically to start kind of from scratch, just an overview. So I'm a buyer in Chicago, I don't know where you have property, so, but I'm just using an example. So I'm somewhere that a property is listed that you have, and I say I would like to buy this. How can I qualify for it? What do I do?
Well, again, it's the conversation you have with me. We do have properties in Chicago and the surrounding areas. We do service all 50 states, by the way, as well. So, so if you see a property that we have that is offering the lease purchase terms, we're going to start the communication, start asking the questions, what can you afford on a monthly basis? What do you have for a down payment? And things of that nature. And also, how soon are you looking to move into a property? Because I had another person call me out of Tennessee. They're looking to move to a property that we have in Illinois outside of Chicago, and they're not going to be in the area for 2 weeks. Well, this property is probably not going to be available anymore. So but obviously they have my contacts, so when they get into town, hopefully we'll have something else available for them.
Right. Okay. So let me make sure. So you had said, that this particular family person wanted, couldn't move for 2 weeks. Do you have scenarios where someone says, hey, I would like to move in as soon as possible. What can we do to expedite things? How long do I have to wait?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Again, it just depends on the property itself. We put these properties under contract with the seller, with the conditions, and the permission to lease purchase them out or sublet them out under these lease purchase terms. We had another seller in, I can't remember the city, a small town in Arkansas last week, and it's been vacant. He had to move his mother to a nursing home, and the property was vacant. And I had somebody call me on Friday, and they had a neighbor friend tell them about the property. They wanted the property, and I mean, within 4 hours, we had them in the property. I mean, they literally said, "We're in a home that we're renting, and it's a health hazard. The landlord is not, doing the repair issues, and we need to move quickly." So basically, instructing them to get access to the property, make sure that the property was, to their, to their liking. And then we went ahead and got their application, processed the payment, deposit, contract, signed, sealed, and delivered. And they were in on that Friday afternoon. So we can move as quick or as slow as you want us to, depending on the situation.
Okay.
Which is
That's
pretty
cool.
awesome.
That is pretty cool. I like that. Okay. What have you ever come across where there's a house like that's on the market already, like it's for sale through an agent, for instance, and I'm interested in having it, but I'm still having problems. Is there a way that you can negotiate something through a seller that's already on the market?
That's a
Through
good, yeah, that's a good question. I do have that question, asked to me quite a bit, where a buyer will come to me, they're looking for lease purchase terms, and we just don't have the inventory, uh, of what they're looking for. So they would say, "Hey, Jim, what if I run across a property that I like, but it's listed for sale by owner, or it's listed with the realtor? Is there anything that you can do to obtain the property and do a lease purchase with me?" The question is always, it's possible. Anything is possible, but it's very challenging because if you don't know already, a lot of real estate agents they don't do lease purchase options. They're not, unfortunately, they don't always look out for the best interests of the seller, and they want to get paid. We all want to get paid. I get it. But at the end of the day, you have to look out for the best interest of your client, in this case being the seller. And if the property is just sitting there and it's not being sold traditionally, um, then start thinking outside the box as a realtor and look at some other alternative, methods, which would be lease purchasing out the property, so the seller can at least have somebody making the payment for them and getting out from underneath, the debt that's in there. But unfortunately, not all agents can think outside the box. They want to get paid a commission, which I understand, but
Sure.
it's possible. Yeah, we can make the phone call, ask the question, and see if we can make it happen.
Okay. So that's something that you would offer,
Sure,
to talk with the agent or the buyer or,
absolutely.
I mean,
We're all about creating win-win situations.
mhm, mhm. Okay, great. I think that's all the buyer questions I have for now, unless there is something that I have missed that you need everybody to know that I'm
Well,
ready to.
yeah, there is a lot more things, and I'll kind of go through it quickly. A lot of buyers come to me and they ask me, what happens to my down payment? Is it applied towards the purchase?
That's great.
Um, do my monthly payments go towards the purchase? Things of that nature. So, first of all, the down payment is 100% treated as like an earnest money, but we call it a binder fee, and it is applied towards the purchase price. So let's say you moved into a $200,000 house, you put $10,000 down. That $10,000 is going to get subtracted off that sales price, and then you're looking to finance $190,000. A mortgage payment, or in their situation would be a rent payment, would look like probably $1,600, which is just rent. So none of the rent payment, unfortunately, goes towards the purchase. However, if you want to, put more money towards the purchase, you can. I just had a couple yesterday that called me. They're looking, they're interested in one of our properties in Middleburg, Florida, and they're being transferred from, where are they being transferred from? The East Coast somewhere. I can't think of the state, but he's a truck driver and he's being transferred, and they said, they're comfortable with $1,400. I said, well, this is a $264,000 house. You need to get more comfortable in paying what a mortgage payment would look like, So I said, what I could do the $1,400, but it makes me uncomfortable because I don't want to set you up for failure. So what we agreed to do is you pay $1,600 and I'll give you a $200 credit towards the purchase in addition to your down payment that you're going to put up. And he really liked that idea a lot. So okay. Those are good questions that they ask. Another good question, what happens if I'm not able to?
On that question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it is negotiable whether or not you can have some go towards.
Absolutely.
I have heard that some people do that in a lease to own.
Yes.
They do put, percentage, whatever it is, 200, 100, 500 towards that. So it is negotiable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything is negotiable. Everything. It may not be realistic, but it is negotiable, at least a conversation, So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Ready for the next one.
Well, the other question that they ask is, as a buyer, is what happens at the end of the term? I'm still not able to qualify. Do I get kicked out of the house or what? And I says, well, again, you have to follow the program, getting plugged into the credit repair company, the lender, being proactive. We do offer some extensions. Sometimes they may cost you to extend for another period of 12 months, as kind of as a penalty, but also as a motivator. It's like, hey, I really need to get this done, because if not, I'm going to be faced with another, down payment to keep me in place so I can take advantage of this situation. So
the motivating, yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
if you're going to have to leave, right? It's motivating.
Yes.
At work.
Yes. And then as we switch gears to the seller questions, those are more, a seller side question as well. They want to know what happens too. So if you don't have any more buyer questions, let's go ahead and shift gears to the seller side and ask me, seller questions. Yeah.
Well, that's a really good point, because the seller would want to know what happens if they can't afford it at the end of the
Right.
time.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
another question that would be for both sides is if we have someone in there, how long is it going to take? So as the buyer, how long will it take normally, maybe, for my credit score to improve? And then as the buyer, how long would it take them to sell to them?
Yeah, sometimes those questions are like, let's go ask, Mr. Owl. So, but typically we put a time frame on it, obviously, because there's motivating factors. As a seller, they want some closure at some point. Where's the line drawn in the sand where there's a date of execution and a closing date in mind? So usually 12 to 24 months is usually, the guideline that we put in place, because if any most buyers that we do the pre-screening with, if they just come off a bankruptcy or a foreclosure, something of that nature, we know we're just setting them up for failure. We don't want to put them in a property and thinking that, 24 months is going to be enough time to close this, deal out and have a successful closing. So, so we just won't put them in the program. So for the most part, when we look at people's credit, it's 12 to 24 months. Obviously, if we can get them done sooner, that's even better because, that's when we get paid too. We get paid from the sale. There's very minimal monies that is collected throughout the process. We have administrative fees and stuff like that. So we have a vested interest in seeing this through and getting it closed as quick as possible. So, I mean, we've even had cases where the buyers come to us, we pull their credit, and we find out, you know what, we can get you a loan today, and they didn't realize it. Really? I said, yeah, we can get you a loan today. So we turn them over to the lender and they close the deal immediately. We don't even have to go through the lease purchase, process. So it's pretty awesome.
Okay, great. So as we switch over to fully to the sellers, the first question I have for you is, what if I don't have any equity in the house? How can you help me to sell the property, especially if I have work or that I need to do on the house? There's and I don't have any money to work with.
Okay. Well, that's a great question, Lorraine. And we've helped out a lot of sellers in that situation as well. When we had that mortgage fraud that took place, over 600 million people were affected and lost their homes to foreclosure, which is just, I mean, it's painful, and a lot of people are still struggling through that. No more equity in the home. There were some repair issues, things of that nature. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dive in with the seller and ask them what they want. What is it that you really want? What do you see yourself achieving through this process? What are your goals? If you know for a fact there's no equity in the home, obviously you're not going to get anything from the sale. But I think most of the time when I speak to the sellers, they also tell me, well, I don't want to pay out any more money either. I just want to be done with this thing. So if I find out that that's all they want and they just want to be out from underneath the mortgage, then we put together, an action plan. And the action plan will look similar to a lease purchase program where we'll put a tenant buyer in the property, get their mortgage paid, take the property as is. We'll take care of the repairs through our buyer, our tenant buyer, and then at a future date. Now this time it may take longer than 2 years because we got to get the property's value to catch up with the market, or at least to the balance of what's owed on the mortgage, right? So those are some of the steps that we take. We've had sellers that were even worse off than that. They were 2-3 months behind. I had a seller that not only were they 2-3 months, but actually several sellers 2-3 months behind. In addition to that, they put a bad tenant in there. They destroyed the place, and sometimes it's been a family member, which was crazy. Mm-hmm. So they couldn't afford the fix the property. They couldn't afford the mortgage anymore, and they didn't want to be faced with foreclosure. So we offered them a simple solution, which was challenging, but we were able to successfully make that happen. And we placed somebody in the home. They just, they just deeded the property over to us at that point because we would have to take more interest in the property because of the longevity of how long this process was going to take for us to, get the mortgage paid off. And obviously, we're not a charity case. We do, have to earn a living as well. No cost to the seller, but in exchange, we have to take ownership of the property itself. So I hope that answered that question.
Yes. So with that said, then another question came to mind was that you said that you find the tenants, right?
Yes.
And so what exactly does that mean? Is there, what do you do to find the tenants and make sure that they won't do the same thing that um, that that had been put in there before that caused problems.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question as well. So, this isn't our first rodeo. I've been doing this since 1993. Now I'm showing my age, but we do a thorough background pre-screening process of each of the tenants that we consider. Obviously, we're doing a full marketing campaign to generate interest for tenant buyers that are looking for these type of deals because they know they got to get their credit rectified. They can't get traditional financing. So we do a full-blown credit check. We do background pre-screening. We're getting references, job information, job history, payment history, all that stuff. So we don't just throw anybody in there. And knock on wood, since 1993, I've never once had a tenant buyer destroy a property. And that's a question that gets asked, by me all the time from sellers. Well, what happens if, the tenant destroys the property? And
That's
I'm
one of
like,
my questions.
yeah, yeah. So I've already answered it for you. That's a great question because, you're watching the 11 o'clock news from rookies that don't know what they're doing. So it's very important that we don't just put anybody in there. I mean, sellers can do that themselves, but you're setting yourself for a possible failure rate because you didn't do the steps that it took to make sure that they're the right people for the property.
Right. And it turns out that there are plenty and many of people that just got caught up in something and their credit just needs help for a while, but they're good pays, they're good people, they're not going to do that, and you're just finding the right people to go into the right homes.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, I think we're on to our next question.
All right.
So usually, so normally how long, I know you kind of answered this a little bit with the buyer, um, and I realize that it could be any times, but I'm just going to ask it just in case someone's looking specifically for this question, is how long does it normally take to put a tenant in?
Okay, that's a good question. So, yeah, once we make an agreement with the seller and they give us written permission to start marketing this property under the lease purchase term rent to own program, we put a 60-day time limit on it, okay? Because, we're not running a museum, okay? We don't want this inventory sitting around doing nothing. And while the seller, so to speak, is bleeding out, I had a seller out of Florida yesterday that I gave her some great news that she's had a property vacant. She's making payments on it for 6 months, plus her own house and another property that her father owns that she's making. So she's like bleeding out. So she had to scrape and collect some money just to get the mortgage current. So we like to expedite the process as quick as possible. Obviously, in more rural areas with smaller populations, it's going to take longer. We may or may not even engage in putting together a contract. We always like to give it our best effort. The one in Arkansas I talked about, earlier in the segment, the population there was under 2,000 people. It's crazy. And we had it marketed for probably closer to 90 days, another vacant property. And the second person that called us, we needed to figure out a way to make it work. And we did. And it was awesome. So, but 60-day window is usually
Okay.
the rule of thumb.
And how do you market for the tenants and the buyers? How do you?
Well, a lot of extensive marketing, in this day and age, it's the internet. It's the internet. I mean, back in the day when I first started, it was the newspaper, and radio advertising, television advertising. They had a real estate channel that you could tune into out of Atlanta, Georgia. And they'd flip through the different, pictures of the properties, and you'd had your phone number down below, and buyers could call, which was kind of cool. But now this day and age, it's through social media, Facebook marketing. Craigslist is not so much anymore because of Facebook marketplace, and other social media platforms, plus our websites. We do a lot of lead generation through keyword searches. So anybody that's typing in lease purchase or rent to own, things of that nature, those key searches are going to pull up our website, and then they're going to have access to our inventory. Same with the sellers. If they're looking to sell their home, they're going to find us on the internet. So it's a beautiful thing. And now we've even stepped up even further, and it's kind of like we're stalking these people, because there's certain rhythms, or I don't know the technique terms of it, but if somebody's chattering on a social media outlet, we have a software program that can key in on those keywords, and then we can actually obtain their Facebook profile information or any other social media outlet that they're on, and then we can start bombarding them with properties that meet their qualifications, which is kind of scary, but it's pretty aggressive as well, and it gets the job done.
Okay, so it sounds like more personal type advertising based on what people need, not
Yes.
just. So that's actually intuitive and can be nice that you're getting advertisement for things that you need, especially if you're in a bind. Do you need a place to stay, or you need something to sell, or someone to sell for you? So
Absolutely.
Fit.
Yes.
Well, I noticed too on the website, which I think is very thorough. I'm really enjoying your website. It's well done.
Thank you.
I noticed in the question and answer area that a lot of these questions and answers are available for people too, if they would like to rather read or maybe something in less detail or more detail.
Right.
Depending on the question.
That's right.
Yeah. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that.
All right.
So what? Let's go ahead and just see if there are any more things that come to your mind. It looks like the rest of my questions have already been covered in other questions, the way that they went. I had 3 more, and they've already been covered.
Right.
So, what else would you like to share before we wrap up?
Well, the one last one that I think is a sticking point for some people, if it comes to the point where they're going to lose their house to foreclosure, if we're going to step in and provide a free service, we have to take title to the property, and doing so, it instructs them to quick claim the deed over to us. Okay. Now the sticking point that any and all real estate attorneys will tell them is, no, don't do that, because your name is still on the mortgage and you're still responsible for the mortgage regardless whether you hold title or not. Mortgage company could call the note due if they found out that you transferred title into somebody else's name. So it gets to the point where we want you to feel comfortable with us. We also want you to feel confident that we are who we say we are. We're transparent, and some of these things that we run across with the seller and share with the seller of our achievements in doing so, they just don't have the visualization. They just can't wrap their head around it. They cannot believe that it's possible. We got to retrain our brains to think outside the box. And the naysayers will tell you, no, that's not going to work. In any aspect of life, you might be wanting to climb Mount Everest. Here's an 80-year-old man that climbed Mount Everest. I wonder how many people said that's not going to happen. It's not going to work. So it's very important that you have an open mind and visualize you getting out of this situation. I believe in faith and God, and I believe people are brought together for a reason. It wasn't a fluke that you found me and reached out to me and reached out for help. And so that's why I really encourage people, by all means, get an attorney to look at all the documents before signing anything. At the end of the day, if you don't feel comfortable working with us, we don't want to, we don't want to do business with you in that aspect, because if you're feeling uncomfortable, it just doesn't make good business. Now, I also challenge each and every attorney that looks at our contracts and wants to dissect them and look at something being wrong, because that's what they're paid to do. They're looking at a contract to find something wrong with it so they can validate their value. But I challenge each and every attorney to tell me what you have as a better option. Just tell me that. If you can come up with a better option based on a seller's situation, I'm all ears. But you know what? I've never in my 26 years have ever had an attorney come back to me and give me a better solution for their situation. They don't specialize in what I do. They specialize, in the law. Okay. So I leave you with that. So anybody that's coming out, reaching out, looking for a solution to solving their situation, I encourage you to reach out to us. We'll have our website below. So be sure to click on that, and you can gain access to more information, more programs, list of inventory, and obviously contacting us direct. So, Lorraine, I appreciate you coming out and talking to me and asking questions. That's awesome. If you have anything else to close out the segment, fire away.
Okay. Well, what just came to mind was seeing people in situations, buyers and sellers, and having properties of our own. I know that in this situation that you offer, it does sound like an answer to prayers or to questions people have and are searching for different ways that are a little bit unconventional to what we're used to, and that's what makes them work. And it's very exciting, especially in nowadays with the internet and with putting people together, that it just seems like a great opportunity, and I'm happy to be a part of it so far. And
Awesome.
thank you so much for your time.
All right, Lorraine, thank you so much.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Bye.